I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time. Welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James, and I am so excited to be with you because I get the opportunity to introduce you to extraordinary women, women who inspire me, women who are change makers, who are making a difference in this world and doing things to inspire others to step into their greatness. And my guest today is no exception. Her name is Tish Times. And she's the founder of Tish Times Networking and Sales Training. Tish is a certified networker, community builder, and franchise owner for Network in Action in Phoenix, Arizona. For over 10 years, Tish has been empowering business and entrepreneurs to create revenue generating, business connections, shorten the sales cycle, and close sales with ease, right? She and her team help skyrocket revenue for companies with a well done for you sales solution. Tish Times is an expert at helping companies to attract more leads, maintain a full pipeline, and convert more projects to clients. She's also one of the experts for our women entrepreneurs. She's also an ordained minister. So we have a lot to talk about. Tish, welcome.
Hello, Cynthia. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. It's going to be fun.
I'm so glad you're here. I've had the honor of listening to you teach and being on your podcast and seeing how you inspire people. And I guess I just want to start with, where were you born? I'm sure you weren't born and said, well, I've come on the planet to be a sales expert. Right. Where did you come from? And tell us a little bit about growing up.
So I grew up in El Paso, Texas. I was born and raised there. And up until I was in my very early 20s, it was the only place I lived. No, I take that back. I lived in Prairie View, Texas for 4 years because my dad was in the military. But I grew up as an Army brat that didn't get to travel. That's because I was a surprise baby. My mom had me at 40. So my siblings got to do all the traveling to all the military bases and go overseas and all of that. And then they came home and my dad was just about to retire and found out they were pregnant with me. So I always say I was ordained to be on the earth because God snuck me in at the very last minute. But I grew up kind of like an only child because I'm 11 years younger than my next sibling. They all grew up together, and then I grew up by myself for the most part. But I had a wonderful childhood.
Oh, that's incredible. And so, sales is something that challenges a lot of people. True. And so did you start off being great at sales or did you kind of flow into that?
No, ma'am. Not only was I not great at it, I was afraid of it. I was offered a job. I was in staffing for many years, and I was very comfortable in my cubicle, putting people in jobs, and I loved it. And I had an area manager who saw something in me and invited me to join the sales team multiple times. And every time she asked, I was like, oh, no, that's not what I do. I don't want to do it. I'm not interested. And she tricked me. And I'm so grateful for that woman because she created a position for me and called me kind of like, I think they called it a people manager. And they kind of made me the go-between between the sales department and the operations department. And before you know it, I was out with sales teams and helping them and taking over when they couldn't show up. And now I look up and I'm actually doing sales. So once I realized it was just having conversations, which is something I was good at, it was building relationships and helping people get what they needed. It was like, oh, okay, I can do this. I don't know if I want to do sales, but I can do this conversations and relationship building and all of that. And so it took me time to really learn it and to love it. But initially, because of the word, I think people are scared of the word. And when they hear that word sales, they run from it, just like I did. And now I love it and I love teaching it.
Well, but I think one of the things that's interesting about sales is that we kind of correlate it to slimy, yes, to people, pulling you into something and cheating you or whatever. Right. And so I think that that when you really understand that sales is really about sharing,
Yeah.
then it becomes a whole nother thing. So, so I want to know, how did you get from this corporate environment to your company?
Yeah. So I loved the work that I did. And like I said, I kind of got stuck in the sales world in that company. And I was doing a really great job, Cynthia. I was making that company a lot of money, a whole lot of money. And I sold a contract with a school district. It was a multi-million-dollar contract. And this is what happened. And I feel like God kind of set me up on this. They changed my commission structure once I sold that big contract. So I should have been making a 3% commission. And when I sold that big contract, I remember being asked to come into the office, and they started talking to me about how they were making changes, and this was going to be my new commission package, and it was much lower. It was more like a 1%. And I'll never forget that feeling of, wow, they don't value what I do, and I've done a good job for them. And it was at that moment, that probably several things, but that was kind of like the culmination of me realizing that I could do this in my own right, for my own, for myself, for my own family. I honored my non-compete because I did have a non-compete, and I went into the nonprofit world for about a year and waited that out, and then went and started my own staffing company. And that's where I went into business. I didn't start out doing what I do now as far as, teaching sales and doing sales for other companies. I started off doing staffing, and I did that for, about another 8 years in my own business, and eventually transitioned into doing coaching and training and kind of ending up where I am now.
Yeah, well, and you're marvelous at it. I mean, the women in awe are just so inspired by you. I guess I want to ask though, the world of being an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart.
True.
And so I want to know, did you stumble when you were becoming an entrepreneur? Did you have to learn lessons? Did you get support? I mean, how did you, because Tish Times today is mega in her world, but what did you have to learn along the way?
Oh my God, so much. So I was one of those people that was, and I use this phrase very intentionally. I was just foolish enough to believe I could do it. So when I was told, I have a mentor to this day, very important mentor in my life, who said to me, and he said, "You're making millions of dollars for that other company. Why aren't you doing it for yourself?" And when I said, "Well, I don't have, and I don't know, and I don't, all of those things," he said to me, all you need is a list of people in the cell phone. You don't need an office, all those things, right? So I believed him. And I went into my living room. And when I started this company, it was my staffing company, that is, it was immediately very successful. I just believed, and I went and did it, right? But what I didn't know was that there were going to be setbacks. And I didn't understand the things that were going to be required of me. So I said yes to things I should have said no to. I let fear make a lot of my decisions. And what ended up happening is, when I got in that place of fear and, oh my God, how am I going to make this payroll and all of that? What I did was, I took on a client I never should have taken on. I should have vetted them. I should have known that they weren't a right fit, but they came in and showed a lot of money, and I thought it was going to be a great fit for my company at that time based on my fear and what I needed. And long story short, that company ended up not only not paying me for several weeks after my payroll was due. I had a 30-day net with them. Had already paid a lot of money, thousands and thousands of dollars in payroll, and they didn't pay me. And when they eventually did pay me, they paid me with a check that bounced. And so all of my payroll bounced. I mean, this was a major, major blow to my business, to my integrity, because now I'm in the community. People are looking at me thinking I bounced my payroll. The Fox News came to my house. I mean, it was a big deal. And when I say, talk about an eagle falling from the sky, that's what looked like it happened in my business. And I crawled into a hole for about 2 years. I mean, I was physically moving, but I was in a deep depression. I felt like I had everything had fallen apart. We lost our home, we lost our cars. I mean, we lost everything behind that. So I understand when someone says, well, it's hard and I don't know if I can do it, or you've never been through that. I'm like, oh no, sister, let me tell you, I've been through big failure, and it took me a long time to be able to bounce back from that as well. And there's still days when I feel that. So I get it. And I've been through a lot because of those fear-based decisions and just not understanding certain things.
Well, I love that you're sharing that because, a lot of people think that successful people, it just drops in and they've got it all together, but there's not really a play-by-play book on how you do this because every business is different, every client is different, staff members are different. And I love that you're sharing that. But I also want to say that in the midst of all of this, I want to talk about your faith.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because you are an ordained minister. So how was faith helping you navigate this time?
Well, it helped me not to like completely lose my mind. And there were times where my faith was non-existent, where I felt abandoned. I felt alone. I felt like, God, where in the world are you in this? Because everybody is looking at me, and thinking I am this big failure or that I was, intentionally trying to harm people. And so when I say I was in that deep depression, it wasn't just a mental or an intellectual type of emotional depression. It was a spiritual depression. I felt like God wasn't, in my mind, he wasn't showing up for me. And there were times where it impacted our marriage because I didn't disclose everything that was going on to my husband. He got blindsided by a lot of these things. And so my faith took a huge hit, Cynthia. And it was through that my faith is now as strong as it is, because there was a transformational moment for me when I guess God just showed up for me. And I felt like it was almost like I felt his presence almost in a tangible way. And even though things hadn't completely turned around, I knew that he had me. And I began to trust him more than I was being consumed by my situation. And once I got to that place of trusting him, little by little, it wasn't overnight, but little by little, I began to regain my faith. And now it's the biggest part of my life. It's everything for me.
Yeah. Well, I want to just say amen because I hear you, because I've had, a couple of those spaces in my life where I couldn't get out of bed and I thought, what is the point here? And God, where are you? And how come I'm going through this when I've been so faithful,
Right.
But I will say this, and I want to talk about you because my children were kind of a catalyst for me to keep going, because it was like, I cannot leave my children out here and just lay in this bed. And so as you're going through this and navigating your marriage and your business, and your faith, what part did children play?
Man, I'm so glad you asked that. This past Mother's Day on my podcast, I interviewed my kids. I have 3 adult children, 3 adult sons. And it was the first time we had talked about it together. And because we talked about entrepreneurship, being the children of an entrepreneur was kind of like the topic of the podcast. And for the first time, Cynthia, I heard their take on what was going on. And so I was trying to protect them. I'm trying to shield them from knowing everything. Good, thank goodness my older 2 boys were away at school already. By the time a lot of these major things were happening, my youngest experienced everything. He saw it all. I don't think he knew what was going on. He just thought we were going on trips, going to stay with people on their couches because we lost everything. He didn't know it was like we were almost homeless for a minute. But when I listened to their feedback, I'm in tears, because I'm literally hearing them say, for the first time, I asked them, how did this impact them? And they said they were most impacted by seeing me devastated. They weren't concerned about us losing things. They weren't concerned about how it made them look or whatever. They were more concerned about how it impacted me and my husband. And they saw the hurt and the pain and the feelings of desperation and failure that we had. When I was going through it, however, and the reason I was able to bounce back, and to this day, Cynthia, my primary objective, even though they're grown, is to make sure that they know that there's nothing too big for them to come back from. There's no mistake that's too big for them to be able to bounce back from. I now have grandchildren, and I look at my grandbabies and I say, I get up and make sure that I'm crossing my T's and dotting my I's so that they will have something beyond that. I believe there's a scripture that says we leave an inheritance for our children's children. We should, and I'm endeavoring to do so. I don't want them to ever, in other words, I want to outlive my body. I want
Yes.
them to look back and say, man, my mother, my grandmother, she made a major impact. She was a woman of faith. She cared for us. She built this so that we would have something beyond her life. So they are such a huge motivation for me. If you were to look at my vision board, their faces are right there, staring at me every single day for that very reason, because I got up because of them. And many other reasons as well, but they were a primary reason I got up and continued to move forward when I wanted to wallow. And they're a reason why I do what I do now, and why I'm very intentional about building a successful, profitable business, not just for me, but for them as well.
I love it, and I'll say ditto, same for my children. I guess the thing is though, I, you know, you and your husband run a community. You run this business that has multi layers, and you've got staff.
Mhm.
You've got your children and your grandchildren. Talk to me about how you take care of yourself, because you're juggling a lot of balls.
Yeah. Um, I'm more intentional now than I was before. Those in awe, and you have heard me talk about some health concerns that I'd had in the past, and they were a major eye opener for me, because I was a workaholic, and I'm specifically saying I was very much a workaholic. I drove myself until I would fall asleep every night, and now I am much more intentional about taking time off. I'm more intentional about putting boundaries around my personal, my mental space, my physical space, my time. I ensure that I do things that are good for my body, both, the inside, what I put in my body, how I take care of my body. Something that has become more important to me now that I didn't realize is as important is I make time for friends, time for getting together and laughing and enjoying and doing the things that I thought, quote unquote, I didn't have time for. And what I hadn't realized, Cynthia, is that I had created this life for myself where people always thought I was busy. And so I was wondering, well, why are you guys going off and not calling me? Or why haven't I heard from you? Well, we thought you were busy. And that began to get real loud in my head. I was like, well, the only reason they think I'm busy is because that's what I'm giving off. And so it's not that they don't want to spend time with me. It's just that they perceive that I'm too busy. And so I had to shift that. And I put on my calendar intentional girlfriend time, self-care time. My husband and I have regular date nights. Occasionally, we will get in the car and drive to El Paso, Texas, where my grandbabies live. And we don't tell a soul we're coming except for them, because I don't want to see anybody else. I want to go and play with my grandbabies and be in the park and do anything that they want to do. And there was a time I would have never ever made time for that. And now I'm very intentional about it.
I love that you did that. My husband and I just got back. We drove to California with our dogs to see our kids and grandkids, and it was just great to just be immersed in that. And I do the same thing. I calendar my
Yes.
self-care life, because
Yes.
if I don't, life will just take over and I'll be down the river,
Right. Right.
So I would love it if you would tell people how to find you, and just give us a little sprinkle of what you offer in your business.
Absolutely. So my company does several things, but the things that we're most passionate about and we do the most is we do sales training for entrepreneurs and for companies. And we are the sales team for many companies. So we make their sales calls. We do everything from connection to close. On behalf of that company, very invisibly, meaning that most people don't know that we're a third party, if you will, being an outsourced sales team. And we love it. We're good at it and we enjoy doing it. If you'd like to know more about that or connect with me in any way, you can reach me on any social media platform under Tish Times, and my website is tishtimes.com.
Tishtimes.com. Well, if you want to know about sales, if you want to be supported, if you want to be inspired, run, do not walk, to invite her into your life. So I ask the same last question of every guest. This show is called Women Awakening. And I really would like to know, what is the one thing you want women to know about the importance of their waking up? awakening?
Well, I'll say this. There are people that are watching you and being inspired in some way, shape, or form by you, whether you know it or not. And the importance of us waking up and living full out and being all that we were called to be is that, in my opinion, I think I hold a responsibility for Aaliyah, who's my granddaughter, watching me and seeing how to be a woman, how to be a woman of faith. In some cases, maybe even how to be a businesswoman, how to be a mother, how to be a wife. And I think I have a responsibility to be fully awake so that those who are watching me, if they are watching, I want them to be able to take something powerful away. I want them to be able to go and be that for someone else. And so, yes, I need it for me. But I know that I was put on this earth to help inspire others to live full out, to be, to live out loud, to be fully themselves, and to stay awake so that you can help others to be awake as well. That's what I believe, Cynthia.
Oh, well, I love that that's what you believe, and you are such a demonstration of it. And it is my honor to witness the way in which you show up in the world and how you live out loud and how you invite others into the conversation of how they can step into their greatness without so much pain. So thank you. I am so grateful to know you and to walk this path with you. You just, you make my heart smile.
Oh, thank you. And likewise, thank you for having me, for inviting me in, and especially for having me today. Thank you so much, Cynthia.
So ladies, we do this every week. I interview amazing people just like you just heard here. And you can, wherever you get podcasts, you can find us: iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, Amazon. You just subscribe and then meet these women. I guarantee you there will be a nugget in each interview that will lift you and spark something within you. You are magnificent. You are powerful. You are original. You are dynamic. You are magnificent. There's nobody else like you on this planet. So whatever it is that you have to deliver, now is the time. You don't have to wait one more second. I love you, and I will see you next time.